Adrian Voss's voice echoed across the mat, his black belt glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. The dark-skinned instructor squinted, smirking, his close-cropped fade catching the overhead glow. "I bet you've never seen a real fight in your life, have you?" Noah Kael paused mid-mop and slowly looked up at the man towering at 6'2". He had been the janitor at Silverline Dojo in Redwood Falls for just 3 weeks. His deep brown skin glistened slightly with the effort of cleaning, locks tied back in a neat ponytail. Usually he came after classes ended, when only the hum of the vacuum and the scent of floor cleaner kept him company. But that Thursday night, the advanced class was still in session. "I don't want to disturb you, Sensei Adrian," Noah said quietly, voice low and calm, his southern drawl barely noticeable after years away from Halden Ridge. He bent down again, the muscles in his dark arms flexing as he scrubbed at a stubborn stain. "I just want to finish up so you can continue." Adrian burst out laughing, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at that. He's so scared he won't even step on the mat." 8 students laughed awkwardly, a diverse group of Black, Asian, and Latino practitioners. A few exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to speak. What Adrian didn't know was that the man holding the mop had spent the last 20 years trying to forget who he really was. 20 years since the day he walked away from the ring after an accident that changed everything, a secret so deep that not even his 10-year-old daughter had ever heard it. "Come on now," Adrian taunted, swaggering closer with that same arrogant grin he used to intimidate newcomers. His athletic build, honed by years of training, radiated confidence bordering on cockiness. "Just a light demo. I bet you don't even know a basic guard stance. Let my students see the difference between a martial artist and a janitor." Something stirred inside Noah's chest, like a sleeping muscle waking up after a long rest. His dark eyes that had seen too much, met Adrian's, and for a fleeting moment something passed between them, enough to make the younger instructor hesitate, stepping back ever so slightly without understanding why. "It's just an educational demonstration," Adrian said, his voice now a touch less confident. "Nothing serious, just to show the newbies why we respect martial arts." Noah set the bucket down and straightened up. His movement was light yet precise, far too fluid for someone who'd never touched a mat. At 49, his body still carried the grace of an elite athlete, broad shoulders, lean muscle, the kind of build that came from a lifetime of discipline. The air shifted, conversation stopped, only the sound of breath remained. "All right then," Noah said, voice calm as still water before a storm. "But when we're done, you'll apologize to all of them for turning a place of discipline into a circus." Adrian forced a laugh, but it came out uneasy. "Apologize? You'll be the one apologizing to the floor after your face hits it." No one in that room knew that Noah Kael was once Noah the Phantom Kael, 5-time MMA world champion. He'd walked away at the peak of his career after the accident that claimed the life of his best friend and sparring partner, Theo Drake. Since that day, he had sworn never to fight again. But some vows are made to be broken when dignity is trampled. And then, as Noah stepped onto the mat, the entire dojo held its breath. Adrian adjusted his black belt with a theatrical gesture, clearly savoring every second the spotlight shone on him. "Gather around, everyone. Tonight you're about to witness a live demonstration of why martial arts has ranks and hierarchy." Noah quietly watched as 8 students formed a half circle around the mat. Some looked eager, others uneasy. A brown-skinned girl with natural curls tied neatly whispered something to her training partner, who only shook his head as if to say, "Don't get involved." "Look closely, everyone," Adrian continued, his tone dripping with contempt. His dark skin gleamed with the confidence of someone who'd never truly been tested. "This is the perfect example of why everyone should know their place. This dojo isn't for, well, you get the idea." A familiar ache rose in Noah's chest, Not because of Adrian's words, he had heard far worse, but because of the tone. That smug tone. That way people use power to make others feel small. 22 years ago in Orion Bay, he had heard those same kinds of words. Who does this country boy think he is? That night, the pressure from the ridicule had eaten away at him. And just a week later, the terrible accident with Theo Drake had taken the life of his closest friend. Sensei Adrian, the brown-skinned girl spoke softly, breaking the tension. Maybe we should continue with our regular class. It's getting late. Lena Hart, Adrian snapped, his voice sharp as a blade. Are you questioning my teaching methods? Sit down and watch closely. You'll learn more in the next 5 minutes than in a month of practice. Noah noticed how deliberately he had said her full name, a petty display of authority. He also saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he had seen in his own reflection 20 years ago, when he'd wake up in the middle of a nightmare. That accident still haunted him, a series of punches too fast, too strong. Theo fell, his head hitting the mat with a dull thud that sounded like fate snapping in half. The investigation called it an accident, but Noah knew the truth. He had lost control. He had let the crowd's contempt fuel his fists and lost everything. Well then, Mr. Janitor, Adrian sneered, why don't you show my students how to hold a basic defensive stance? Or is that too complicated for someone whose specialty is holding a mop? Laughter spread through the room, but Noah stood still. He closed his eyes, and in a single breath, he was no longer in Redwood Falls. He was back in Orion Bay, under the blinding lights, surrounded by mocking voices, moments before the tragedy that changed his life forever. What's wrong? Scared? Adrian's voice cut through the silence as he began circling Noah like a predator sizing up its prey. Or are you just planning to stand there like the floor lamp you push around all day? Then he touched Noah, a light shove on the shoulder. Harmless in appearance, but laced with arrogance from a man who'd never been taught the meaning of consequences. Noah absorbed the push without moving an inch, his stance rooted deep like oak roots gripping the earth. And in that instant, Adrian felt as if he had just tried to push a wall. The smirk on his face faltered. Interesting, Noah murmured softly, almost to himself. It's been a long time since someone dared provoke me like that. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry, but the entire atmosphere changed, replaced by the terrifying calm of a man who had already walked through life's darkest valleys. Adrian didn't understand. He still thought he was in control. Did you hear that, guys? He said, forcing a laugh. He thinks this is interesting. Why don't we show him the difference between thinking you know and actually knowing? But every insult, every laugh, only awakened something deeper inside Noah, the part of him he had buried for 20 years. Not rage, not vengeance, but a clear, grounded memory of who he once was when he stopped running. Lena Hart froze. She could feel it, the shift in the air. The way the man stood, breathed, and moved all radiated control and a quiet power she had only seen in old footage of true masters. His dark skin seemed to absorb the light, his presence filling the space with an energy that was both calm and electric. Last chance, my friend, Adrian said, his voice now carrying a hint of impatience. Either you accept this little demo like a man, or I'll call security to throw you out. And guess what? You'll lose your job too. Noah opened his eyes. His gaze locked onto Adrian's, and in that moment, a chill ran down the instructor's spine, as if he had just called the wrong name of a storm. All right, Noah said slowly, voice low but resonant. When we're done, I want you to tell them why you turned a place of learning into a circus of humiliation. Adrian forced a shaky laugh. Explain? You'll be doing the explaining when you're flat on the mat. No one in that room knew that for 20 years, Noah hadn't just been running from his past. He had been learning to master his anger, forging it into a weapon of precision and silence. Every insult, every shove, only fed the storm waiting to be unleashed, and Adrian Voss was about to be the first, and perhaps the last, to feel its full force. Adrian settled into his favorite fighting stance, the one he'd used to intimidate hundreds of newcomers. Feet shoulder-width apart, fists at chest level, weight pitched forward. The classic posture of someone used to striking in controlled environments against predictable opponents. His dark hands were wrapped tight, knuckles scarred from years of practice. "This stance," Adrian said, striving to sound confident, "has sent plenty of newbies running." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew how hollow they sounded. Because the man facing him wasn't a newbie, and he wasn't afraid. Noah Kael still didn't move. He stood like a statue, neck slightly tilted, gaze steady. Neither fearful nor hurried to guard, only assessing. And as he assessed, Noah saw everything. The high guard exposing Adrian's ribs, the unstable base ruining balance, the over-tense shoulders telegraphing every motion before it began. 20 years off the circuit, but Noah's eyes still scanned like X-rays. "You know what's interesting, Adrian?" Noah finally spoke, as casually as if remarking on the weather. "For 20 years I've tried to forget everything. How to move, how to breathe, how to read an opponent. I thought if I forgot I'd be safer. The people around me would be safer." Adrian frowned, not understanding. "But it turns out," Noah continued, a sad smile touching his lips, "some things can't be forgotten. They live in the muscles, in the bones, in the way your heart beats when danger stands in front of you. And right now, when I look at you, I see it all." "See what?" Adrian asked, his voice slightly unsteady. "I see that you're afraid," Noah replied simply. "Not afraid of me. Afraid you're not enough. Afraid that even with a black belt, you're still the kid who feels he has to prove something." The words slid into Adrian's heart like a knife, because they were true, completely true. "Still waiting?" Adrian tried to sneer, bouncing on his toes. "Or are you planning to stand there like a floor lamp?" Noah did the unexpected. He moved, quietly, just a small foot adjustment, a subtle drop of the center, shoulders relaxing into a perfect horizontal line. But to anyone who knew how to look, it was an instant and terrifying transformation. From an ordinary man, Noah Kael became Noah the Phantom Kael, the 5-time MMA world champion. A few students swallowed hard. Lena Hart was the first to grasp the significance of that shift. A chill ran down her spine. She had watched hundreds of hours of footage of the old masters. This wasn't instinctual flinching, it was fight sense, polished by thousands of hours on the edge of life and death. "No," she whispered, her hand trembling as she pulled out her phone. "He's not ordinary." Jace Rowan, beside her, glanced over. "What did you say?" "Look at his stance." Lena pointed at Noah, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. "Perfect center of gravity, shoulders relaxed but ready, eyes not locked on his opponents. He's reading the entire body. This is a master-level fighter." "No way!" Jace shook his head. "He's just a janitor." But behind them, Maya Lin had already started typing on her phone. There was something about the man's face. Familiar. Noah took a single step, a small movement, barely a foot. Adrian flinched back on instinct. The movement was so unconscious, so primal, that a few students looked up in surprise. A black belt backing away from a janitor. This wasn't normal. "Is he scared?" one student murmured. The whisper was small, but in the dojo's hush, Adrian heard it clearly. Blood rushed to his face. No, he couldn't be seen retreating, couldn't lose face in front of his class. He had built this reputation for years. He couldn't let it collapse because of a janitor. "Problem?" Noah asked gently, his voice quiet yet commanding, and the room fell instantly still. Not loud, not threatening, just the absolute confidence of a man who had stood in the world's biggest arenas and never walked away in fear. Adrian forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "No problem. Just admiring your stance. Did someone teach you that on YouTube?" The line was meant to be snide, but no one laughed. The tension had thickened to something almost tangible. "Actually," Noah said slowly, his tone like a teacher explaining a point to a student, without irritation or anger, "I trained at the National Training Hall in Orion Bay. Ever heard of it?" Adrian frowned. The name rang familiar, like a faded memory from some article he'd read. But his brain hadn't connected the dots yet. "Orion Bay?" he asked, a bit of confidence draining away. "What kind of weekend seminar is that?" A few students exchanged looks. Jace Rowan furrowed his brow. He'd heard that name somewhere too. Lena couldn't take it anymore. Her hand shook as she typed fast, "Orion Bay National Gym Martial Arts." The screen lit up. First line, "Orion Bay National Gym where champions are made." Second line, "Training ground for 15 world MMA champions." Third line, "Home to legends, including—" Her heart stuttered. This wasn't a regular gym. This was a shrine where only the best fighters in the world trained, where a single private hour with a coach could cost thousands of dollars. She looked up, eyes wide with alarm and excitement, and whispered, "Oh my God, he trained there." But it still wasn't enough. She needed to know exactly who this man was. Her fingers flew again. Noah Kael fighter Orion Bay. The screen exploded with hundreds of results, and there, at the very top, was a face, younger by 20 years, but unmistakable. The same deep-set eyes, the same strong jaw, the same rich dark skin. The man standing before her. Noah, the Phantom Kael, 5-time world MMA champion. Lena felt the room tilt. "Adrian?" Noah remained calm, his tone unchanged even as he knew the truth was about to surface. "Last chance. Apologize to Lena for silencing her. Apologize to your students for turning this place into a circus. And most importantly, apologize to yourself for becoming exactly the kind of man martial arts teaches us not to be." My offer of mercy hung in the heavy air like smoke. Adrian could choose humility right now. He could admit he'd crossed a line and salvage a sliver of dignity, but pride, the thing that had fed him through years of insecurity, wouldn't allow it. He attacked. The first punch was technically perfect, a jab, quick and precise, executed exactly as in the manuals. It had worked on 99% of the people he'd sparred with over the years. Noah Kael wasn't in that 99%. What happened was so fast and so smooth that half the room couldn't process it. Noah simply wasn't where Adrian's fist was aimed. His body slipped aside like water through stone, no wasted motion, not a millimeter squandered. Head tilting left by precisely 15 degrees, right shoulder rotating to draw a perfect diagonal, hips tracing an invisible arc. Adrian missed, his arm extending into empty space, his body overcommitted into his own force. "Good effort," Noah observed gently, already rebalanced in a new position. Not far, not too close, exactly enough to control. "Clean mechanics, adequate speed, but you telegraph with the right shoulder. It pops up about 2 centimeters before you throw." Adrian whipped around, trying to locate him. His heart pounded. How? How could anyone move that fast without a sound? "Beginner's luck," he muttered, more to convince himself than Noah. The second attack came faster, more aggressive, jab, straight, hook. It was Adrian's favorite combination, a sequence he'd drilled thousands of times, used to end countless spars and wow newcomers. And again, Noah wasn't there. This time Lena could follow, not because Noah had slowed, but because she knew where to look. Noah dipped only a few inches, letting the jab skim over the crown of his locks by less than a centimeter. The wind of it brushed his hair. The straight hunted for target, but Noah leaned back along an impossible curve. Only those with extraordinary suppleness can manage. His spine bowed like bamboo in wind. and when Adrian swung the hook with everything he had left, Noah retreated exactly a half step, absolute economy, so the glove skimmed under his chin by a millimeter. "Interesting combo," Noah remarked, breath perfectly even as if he'd been standing still. "Works on a static target, but after the hook, your entire left side is open. In a real fight, that's when the opponent ends it." Sweat beaded at Adrian's temples. His shirt clung wet despite having thrown only 2 sequences. His breathing grew heavy and uneven. This wasn't normal. He had thrown thousands of punches in his life, in training, in matches, in demos, yet now he couldn't touch a man he'd assumed had never fought. "Stop dancing! Fight!" Adrian shouted, frustration and panic tangling in his voice. He lunged in, even more reckless. Punches, kicks, elbows, everything he knew, but every strike found nothing but air, and the students began to see. This wasn't luck. This was skill at an entirely different level. Adrian's third rush, a desperate jumble of punches, kicks, and sweeps, sliced emptily through space like blows at a phantom. Each strike threw him further off balance. His rhythm collapsed. His breathing stuttered. Sweat stung his eyes, blurring his vision. Then, suddenly, as clarity flickered, Adrian realized something terrifying. Noah was very close, right in front of him. Close enough to see every detail in the man's face, the slight graying at his temples, the calm in his dark eyes, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. How? Adrian panted, chest heaving. Sweat dappled the mat. He had completely lost distance, one of the most basic principles of fighting. How had Noah closed in without him noticing? "Adrian," Noah said gently, his tone as calm as at the start, with no hint of fatigue. He stood at arm's length, not threatening, simply present. "Do you want to know the difference between learning to strike in a safe dojo and learning in professional arenas where a single mistake can be the end?" Adrian couldn't answer. His lungs were burning. His legs trembled. Before he could react, Noah did something that defied the onlooker's sense of physics. No visible tensing, no hip rotation, no pulling the hand back to load power, no aggression, no anger. Noah simply placed the palm of his right hand, dark skin against Adrian's sweat-soaked jai, on Adrian's chest. A gentle touch, almost tender, as if checking whether the man's heart was beating. And Adrian flew, not shoved, not tripped. He literally flew, as if an invisible wave had hurled him backward. His feet left the floor. His body hung for an impossible instant in midair. Time seemed to slow. Then gravity reclaimed him. Adrian sailed back nearly 2 meters, an absurd distance for such a light touch, and landed flat on his back with a thud that made the entire room hold its breath at once. The sound echoed in absolute silence. No laughter, no cheers, no clapping. Only the horrified quiet of people who had just seen something beyond their understanding of martial arts. Jace Rowan stood slack-jawed, unable to believe what he'd witnessed. Maya Lin clutched her friend's sleeve, eyes wide. Another student whispered, "What just happened?" Adrian lay motionless for a few seconds, maybe 3, but it felt like a minute. His eyes locked on the blazing neon overhead as he tried to process what had just happened to his body. No pain. That was the strangest part. He felt only an irresistible force, as if a tidal surge had toppled him, as if a strong wind had blown him away, as if every ounce of strength in his body had been neutralized by a physical principle he didn't understand. That's impossible," Adrian stammered, voice shaking. He lurched to sit up, but his legs were jelly, unresponsive. Lena Hart stood stunned, phone trembling in her hand. In 2 years of sports psychology research, after analyzing hundreds of hours of fight, footage and reading dozens of studies on combat biomechanics, she had never seen, not even on video, such a display of pure, controlled power. No brutality, no anger, no showboating. Just the clinical, perfect application of a technique she'd only ever read about in ancient martial arts lore. What some call internal power, or fajin, in Chinese systems. But this wasn't myth. It was happening right in front of her. In fact, Noah said evenly, stepping forward and offering Adrian a hand up, a gesture of respect after putting him down. It's quite simple once you understand leverage, precise timing, and how to transmit energy from the ground through the whole body. Principles I learned and refined over my 22-year professional career. 22 years? Professional? Those words hung in the air. Adrian batted the hand away, trying to stand under his own power, one last struggle to preserve a shred of pride. But his legs still shook, his knees still buckled. He had to lean against the wall to steady himself. 22 years professional, Adrian echoed, dazed and horrified. In what? Lena couldn't stay quiet any longer. She stepped forward, phone raised for all to see. Her voice trembled, almost a reverent whisper. Sensei Adrian, you don't understand who he is, do you? Every eye in the room turned to her. Adrian looked over, face still ashen. On Lena's screen, dozens, no, hundreds, of articles, photos, and videos filled the search results, all about one man, Noah, the Phantom, Kael. Noah Kael, Lena read aloud, her voice shaking with both fear and awe. Nicknamed the Phantom, 5-time consecutive world mixed martial arts champion from 2001 to 2005, considered one of the most technically sophisticated and hardest-to-hit fighters in MMA history. Professional record, 47 fights, 47 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws, retired unexpectedly at age 29, at the peak of his career. She stopped, her voice catching, as she read on. After a tragic training accident claimed the life of Theo Drake, his sparring partner and closest friend, Kael never stepped into the ring again. The whole room detonated in silence, not with noise, but with realization. Shock. Absolute astonishment. Adrian's face went from pallid to paper white. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He had just challenged a living legend. He had publicly tried to humiliate a man whose ordinary punch could have sent him to the hospital. Worse, the man hadn't even needed to punch. A single gentle touch had been enough to show Adrian exactly where he stood. Five-time world champion? Adrian stammered, like a child discovering that Santa Claus really exists. Except this Santa Claus could crush him with a pinky. Undefeated? 47 fights? Noah nodded quietly, without pride or boasting. Just a simple fact. I retired at 29, he said, his voice carrying a deep sorrow. Since then, I've done any work I could find. Cleaning, maintenance, gardening, repairs, simple jobs, a simple life, no spotlight, no cameras, no need to prove anything to anyone. And most importantly, no ring. Why? Maya Lin asked softly, with the unguarded curiosity of 19. Why give it all up? Noah looked at the young woman, and in his eyes lay a pain 20 years hadn't erased. Because I killed my best friend, he said plainly. The room went silent. Theo Drake. He was 22. We were training. I lost control. And he never woke up. Silence pressed down. After that, I realized, strength without control is the most dangerous weapon. And if I couldn't trust myself, it was best not to use it. So I disappeared. For 20 years, I didn't hit anyone. Not even in self-defense. He looked at Adrian. Until tonight. The change in Adrian Voss happened before everyone's eyes, painful and undeniable to watch. The arrogant man vanished. The one who always spoke loudly, always needed to prove himself, always leaned on his students to feel important. All of that dissolved. In its place stood someone who had just glimpsed the full scope of his own ignorance, his small, petty arrogance. I didn't know, Adrian whispered, voice breaking. If I'd known who you were, if If you'd known, you would have treated me with respect, Noah cut in, still gentle, his words sharp as a surgeon's blade. That's good. But then the real question is, would you still humiliate another janitor? Another worker without a championship to defend himself? A new student who doesn't dare speak up to you? That question pierced Adrian deeper than any physical blow. Because Noah had touched the root of the problem, not ignorance, not misunderstanding, but arrogance. The belief that one has the right to belittle others because of status, titles, or their job. Adrian sank to his knees in the middle of the mat, unable to stand, not because his body was weak, but because his spirit had collapsed. And in that silence, every student saw something they would never forget. A lesson that true strength doesn't come from defeating an opponent. It comes from knowing when you don't need to strike at all. 3 months later, morning sunlight poured through the windows of Silverline Dojo, illuminating a scene very different from the night everything changed. Noah Kael stood before the class, no longer a janitor, but an instructor. There was no colored belt on his uniform, only plain white fabric. "Why don't you wear a belt, Sensei?" a young student asked on the first day. "Because a belt is just cloth," Noah replied. "It doesn't make you a better fighter, and it doesn't make you a better person. What makes you better is the person you choose to be every day." From the 8 students of that fateful night, the class had grown to 32. All over Redwood Falls, people were talking about Sensei Noah, the black man who had been a legend, lost everything, then found himself, again through teaching. But this wasn't an ordinary martial arts class. "Today," Noah said, "we won't start with technique. We're going somewhere." A bus took the entire class to Redwood Falls Cemetery on the outskirts of town. Noah led them to a simple grave. Theo Drake. 983-2005. He lived to fight and fought to live. Noah knelt and laid his hand on the headstone. "This is Theo Drake," he said softly. "My best friend, and he died because of me." The class stood silent as Noah told the whole story. No abridging, no evasion, the pressure, the anger, the punch, the death. "I retired the next day," he concluded. "Not because I was afraid to lose, but because I was afraid to win when I couldn't control my strength. You don't learn martial arts to hit people. You learn it to control yourself." At the edge of the group, Noah Kael, Noah's 10-year-old daughter, with her father's dark eyes and her late mother's gentle smile, heard her father's past in full for the first time. Tears fell, but her face shone with pride. Back at the dojo, she whispered, "Dad, I'm proud of you." Noah knelt and hugged her. "I'm proud of you too, Arya. Every day." That afternoon, Adrian Voss sat in the locker room, looking at his new uniform. He was no longer the gym owner. He had sold it to Noah for a symbolic price and now worked as an assistant instructor. The decision hadn't been easy. A week after the incident, he lost half his students. The discreet video Lena recorded spread across the internet. Black belt, humiliated by janitor. His reputation in the martial arts community collapsed. Ironically, it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Over the past 3 months, Adrian had learned more than martial arts. He learned humility, respect, and how to teach without domination. Most importantly, he understood that value doesn't come from making others smaller, but from helping them grow. "Adrian," Noah knocked on the door. "There's a new student. I think you'll want to meet her." In the lobby stood a 15-year-old black girl with her mother. The girl kept her eyes down, shy. Braids framed her face, but she seemed to want to disappear into herself. "This is Emma," the mother said. "She's being bullied at school. We hope martial arts can help her feel more confident." Adrian saw himself 20 years earlier, awkward, insecure, longing for a place to feel worthy. He knelt to meet her eyes. "Emma," he said gently, "I can't promise that martial arts will make you strong, but I promise it will teach you something more important, that the strength was already inside you." Emma looked up, a spark of hope in her eyes. Really? Really, Adrian smiled. And I know because someone just taught me that. 6 months later. The dojo was packed. 50 students of all ages and backgrounds. Affluent and struggling, confident and timid, strong and fragile. A beautiful tapestry of black, brown, Asian, and white faces, all united under one roof, learning the same lessons. Noah stepped out, beltless, carrying only a heart full of experience. Today I ask, why do you train? To be strong, to defend myself, to win. Noah nodded. All true, but the truest answer is, you train to find out who you really are. Not the strongest or the fastest, but the best version of yourself. The one who controls power, lifts others up, and knows when to strike and when to step away. That's the lesson I learned the hard way, and I hope you learn it without paying the price I did. The class fell quiet, then applauded. Not loudly, but steady and respectful, as if they'd just found something they hadn't known they were seeking. 1 year later. Noah stood before Theo Drake's headstone. He came every week, no longer out of shame, but out of gratitude. Thank you, Theo, he whispered. You taught me the greatest lesson. Uncontrolled strength is dangerous. Controlled strength is a gift. I'm trying to live in a way that makes you proud. With every student. With Aria, so that the tragedy carries meaning. A light breeze moved through the cemetery. Noah smiled and walked back to the car, where Aria was waiting. Did you talk to Uncle Theo, Dad? I did, sweetheart. What did he say? Noah looked back at the grave, then smiled at his daughter. He said, keep going, make it matter. And that's what I'm going to do. When justice doesn't come from a punch, it comes from a lesson. Noah Kael proves that true strength isn't in knocking an opponent down, it's in lifting them up after the fall. Adrian Voss learned the hard way that respect can't be demanded, only earned. Lena Hart shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, but speaking up while afraid. If this story touched you, remember, you don't need to be a champion to make a difference. You need the courage to stand for what's right, the humility to admit you're wrong, and the generosity to lift others up. That is the kind of strength that changes the world.